I'm Allie Tucker, and this is Molly Phillips, and we're from Student Legal Services. Some of you may have been at Molly's presentation last week. So this is our second of our three-part series, and I'm sure Molly mentioned last week, we do have one more next week at the same place, same time. We encourage you guys to come and attend. That one is talking about public safety, so that's a different topic, but very important. Tonight we're going to talk about driving laws, insurance, and purchasing a car, having accidents, things related to driving. So really important for everybody, but especially for you guys. And we'll talk about the reasons why. Molly and I are going to split it up according to our areas of expertise. Just as background, I am part of the criminal and traffic team, so if you receive a traffic citation, I would be one of the attorneys that would help you out with that ticket, give you advice about what to do, whether to pay it or go to court, and then physically go with you to court. And Molly, you can.
And I'm a member of our civil team, which means that I deal with issues primarily relating to money damages. And so I could represent you with respect to traffic-related issues, either in the purchase or sale of a vehicle, any issues that might come up during the transaction itself. So if you have like a fraudulent issue that comes up, or a seller sells you something that was problematic, or potentially if there's a car accident, if there are questions about liability and whose responsibility to pay, those could be situations where I could represent you.
Okay, so we'll get started, and you can interrupt us during the presentation if you have specific questions about an area that we're talking about, or we can just cover questions at the end. We're flexible, whatever you guys want to do, okay? So just a little bit about Student Legal Services. We are attorneys, but we're attorneys for students. So we're really focused on keeping you guys in school and focused on your studies. And you come to us to give us your legal issues or questions or concerns so that we can take care of that and you can focus on school. So as you can see on the slide, we're in our 4th year of service, and we keep helping out and representing and advising more and more students. So definitely do not hesitate to come and see us. We can just give you advice. And we can do all the way up to representation in an actual lawsuit or case, okay? So a lot of students don't really understand why students would need lawyers, and there's several things that come up over the time that you're at Ohio State. This basically is like a little city in and of itself, and you'd be surprised at how many times you may want to come in and just ask us for advice. There are no other attorneys in this area that are going to sit down with you and give you advice. So if you ever have a legal question, come and see us. We're happy to talk to you. So there's 2 areas. As I said, my area of expertise is the criminal and traffic. So in terms of the criminal matters, which we're not going to touch on, we will handle any kind of misdemeanor offense in Franklin County. The traffic is really what we're going to talk about tonight, and that is driving on a temporary permit outside of the restrictions, no operator's license, minor misdemeanor, so speeding ticket, a traffic accident if you're the one cited, stop sign, things like that. And Molly can tell you about the other part.
And last week we talked a lot about landlord-tenant issues, but we do represent students with respect to a whole array of landlord-tenant issues. So if you are someone who's living off campus and you weren't here last week, and you do have a question about, your landlord's obligations, your obligations as a tenant, please come and see us. That's something that we can help you with and maybe represent you on.
Finally, like I said, I'm part of our civil team, and we have this whole bucket of representation where we do a ton of stuff. And I would just say, really honestly, if you ever have an issue that's a legal issue, or you think that it might be a legal issue, and even if you're not really sure if it's something that a lawyer should or could advise you on, just contact our office, and we do a really good job of kind of talking about what type of services we can provide and giving you a realistic expectation as to whether or not it's something we can handle.
Okay. So we'll start talking about driver's licenses. So, and again, you can correct us if we're wrong about what students believe and don't believe. So definitely let us know if we're, misstating something. As a student at Ohio State, our advice about driving is to get an Ohio license. So we do know that many students have international driver's licenses. We are aware of that. However, we have done some significant research and have had discussions with Columbus Police and the Columbus City Prosecutor's Office. And it is their belief, under the law, that if you are a resident in Ohio, then you must obtain an Ohio driver's license. And in terms of what does resident mean, they believe that if you are a student at Ohio State, you are a resident of Ohio. So we know that you may not stay here. We know that you are not from here, and we know that you have a driver's license that is valid from another country. But we're not the people giving out the tickets and handling the cases. If it was up to us, we would say that those were okay, but it's not. And so we have reached out to the people that make those decisions, and they have told us that bottom line is they believe that you must have an Ohio license. So what that means is when you come here and you decide that, yes, I do want to be able to drive, the first step is a temporary permit, okay? We need you to get a temporary permit so that you can drive. Fast forward to the next slide.
Yeah, I think the next one is a temporary.
There we
Yeah.
go, temporary permit. So there's restrictions on this license. It's like a learner's permit. So you have to have another individual in the front passenger seat of the vehicle. That individual has to have an Ohio driver's license, must be 21 or older, and must not be under the influence of anything. So if they were driving themselves, it would be illegal. Okay, so you can't have your friend who has a driver's license from Florida in the front seat. It's very specific because they want somebody in the car with you that understands the driving laws of Ohio. So we have a lot of students that get caught up with this because they have that permit, and I understand you guys are busy, you need to go run to the store, you need to go pick up an assignment. You cannot drive without somebody else in the car, okay? You just can't, or you're going to get a ticket, and if you do get a ticket, it's not the end of the world, so we're not here to make you feel nervous about it. Just come and see us, and we'll take care of it, and we'll represent you, but it's really important that you understand that a temporary permit is important, but it has restrictions on it.
So in addition to having a valid driver's license and or a valid temporary learner's permit under Ohio law, you also must carry car insurance. So just a show of hands, in your home country, are you required to have car insurance? Yes, some nods, and some people are like, not so sure. That's a really common reaction that I get from international students. Depending upon where you're from, there may be some requirements. They may be very different from what we have here. Under Ohio law, you are required to carry what is called only liability-only coverage, okay? So let me explain what that means. That means that if you are responsible for an accident, as the driver, let's say you're driving and you make a mistake and you cause a car accident, that your insurance will cover the other person's vehicle, okay? And you have to have minimum liability coverage in Ohio, which is really not a very high dollar amount. So if you hit like a Mercedes or if you cause a lot of personal injury, that minimum coverage is not something that is probably going to protect you against any significant liabilities. Or let's say you cause like a 10-car pileup. I mean, that's a really bad situation. And your minimum liability coverage would probably not cover you to the extent that you would need some sort of coverage under Ohio law. So this first question addressing what does insurance cover, well, that depends, okay? We as an office very, very strongly recommend comprehensive vehicle coverage. So if you're going to take any notes today, take these with respect to insurance. I want you to have liability coverage, collision coverage, and uninsured motorist coverage, okay? And that's usually kind of called comprehensive coverage. But I'll explain the difference between all three of these things. So I talked a little bit already about liability. That is going to cover the other cars that you hit in the event you're the person who is responsible for the accident, okay? Collision coverage, that will cover your own vehicle in two situations, all right? First of all, in one situation, let's say you are the person who is responsible for the accident, collision coverage is going to cover your own vehicle, okay? Or let's say, there was nobody else involved, but you hit like a pole or something like that. I mean, if you have liability-only coverage, your car isn't going to be covered in that situation. So it's a huge bummer. I mean, if you all of a sudden are out and you make a simple mistake, the reality is at some point in your driving career, most people make some sort of a mistake that causes an accident. And we have situations where students have bought brand new vehicles, you know, and they have a minor slip up which causes a decent amount of damage to their vehicle, and then all of a sudden they think that they had car insurance and that everything was going to be okay, and their insurance company is like, you have liability only coverage, like we're not going to cover this situation. And so then they're in my office, what am I going to do about this, you know, $10,000 property damage bill or whatever the case may be. And in those situations when there's nobody else at fault for the accident, I'm like, you got to just deal with it, which is really terrible, okay? The third type of insurance that I talked about was called uninsured motorist coverage or underinsured motorist coverage. They're different but very similar. So what I talked about earlier was that under Ohio law, you have to have car insurance. But there are lots of people who don't have car insurance, despite what the law tells them to do. So let's say that you're driving along and you're doing everything that you are supposed to be doing under Ohio law, and somebody hits you. And you're not responsible for the accident. The other person gets cited. You know, you weren't doing anything wrong, but that person doesn't have car insurance. In those situations, if you have what's called uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage, then you would have the ability to tap your own insurance policy to make sure that any damages to your car would be covered. This, I think, is a really, really important issue. I mean, I have had multiple, I can't even count the number of cases where, and this is not limited to international students, to students just in general, where they haven't been responsible for a car accident, and then all of a sudden, you know, they are trying to file a lawsuit against somebody who has no money. And the likelihood of actually collecting from that person, even if we get a judgment against them, is so small. And so if you just have uninsured motorist coverage, then what happens is you can just pay a deductible under your policy, which may be like $250 or $500, depending upon what you negotiate. And your own insurance company will cover the damages to your vehicle. I see a lot of kind of puzzled faces. So does anyone have any questions about that, or does that make sense? Yep. Right, they shouldn't be driving. But they do. And the reality is, you know, there are so many people that drive around without insurance. Now, if you do drive without insurance, no matter who you are, and you're cited or you're pulled over, or otherwise, you know, the police come into the situation and they understand that you don't have insurance with respect to an accident or something like that, then you'll get what is called an FRA suspension, right?
Yeah.
Is that what it's called?
So yeah, I was gonna make sure that we got on that. So what Molly's saying is if you're in an accident, the first thing I want to say is Molly was saying if you're determined to be responsible, okay, who makes that decision? Even if you don't feel like you're responsible, if you got the ticket, you're responsible.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing is if the officer makes a decision when they're at the scene who to issue the citation to. And if it's you, unfortunately, we're going to have an uphill battle to argue that you're not responsible for the accident, even if you believe that you did nothing wrong. Okay? And then on top of that, like Molly said, if you didn't have insurance, then when we go to deal with your case down at court or you pay the ticket, the BMV wants to see proof that you had insurance. And if there isn't any, they're going to put a suspension on your license for driving without insurance, which means if you then continue to drive, you'll get a new charge called driving under suspension, which is relatively serious. So people drive without insurance. The BMV hopes they can catch them eventually, put suspensions on their license. But at the end of the day, a lot of those people out there don't care, but we know you guys aren't those people. So we want to make sure that you have the insurance. And another thing I wanted to mention is you can pay for insurance in advance. You can pay like a 6-month premium in advance, but you have to continue to pay it because we've had students that we know you're busy, forget to pay that next premium, the policy gets canceled, and you're driving around without insurance and you didn't even know it.
Yeah. Yes, go ahead, Roger.
Especially when some students go abroad and then come back and they've forgotten that deadline is passed.
Sure.
So that is something that I've seen happen.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Question. If I rent a car somewhere out of state, so in that case, and I may not have no car insurance.
Sure. Right. So first of all, the first question is to check your underlying policy, because it's possible that your policy, depending upon your type of coverage, would cover you in those situations. And you should definitely pick up the phone and call an agent because it's very unlikely that it's something that's going to be really intuitive in looking at your policy documents, okay? So if your agent says to you, oh yes, if you go to the state of Florida, you're going to be covered under your car insurance, then you would otherwise be covered. You would have car insurance, okay? Now, there are lots of different products that the rental car company can offer to you in addition to the coverage that you have already been provided. You're going to need to decide in your own situation whether or not those are worth it to you. If you already have comprehensive coverage and you have confirmed, so this is a big and you have confirmed that it's going to cover you when you're renting a car, it is typically unnecessary to purchase what they call these LDWs, limited damage waivers, that are provided through the rental car insurance companies, okay?
And the same, I think, applies to Car2Go?
Yes.
Because I think we-
Car2Go, actually, you are covered. So if you are going to get a driver's license here in Ohio and you are not only going to drive Car2Go, that is it, you will be covered. But you have to first have an Ohio driver's license. And again, that would only cover you in Car2Go.
And also friends' cars, so if you're gonna drive a friend's car and you don't have your own, we understand, but we have no clue what kind of coverage that friend has. So you need to be proactive in getting your own coverage, even if you don't own a car. Okay?
Yeah.
In terms of this issue, if I'm moving out, I give my car to a friend to take care of. So he will use my car for like 3 or 6 months. How can he purchase the insurance to cover my car
Will they issue a policy to him if he's not the titled owner? Is that the question? Or would, yeah. So, I mean, a couple of things. First of all, you could check with your insurance company to see whether or not he would be covered if you drove your vehicle. And if so, then you could just go ahead and get a policy. I mean, you could just pay the premium so that he's covered during the time that he's there. And if you want to have him cover it, that would be something that you guys would work out amongst yourselves. But you have to make sure with your insurance company that he would be covered, you know, if he's... So some insurance companies will not issue a policy for someone on a specific vehicle if they are not the titled owner of the vehicle. Others may. So insurance is just like any other service. Every single company is going to have a different risk tolerance. This is a great segue into the point that it's really important that when you're shopping for insurance, you don't take no from the first company as a bottom line answer. In addition, if you are comparing rates, I mean, you really need to compare rates. Don't just talk to the first company that you talk to and take the rate that they give you as the best rate available to you. The other thing, and I'm not sure whether or not this is covered on another,
There we go.
yeah, okay. So we did talk about friends, but one of the things that I see with students, and this is not limited just to international students, this is with domestic students as well. I think buying car insurance is a very overwhelming thing, and so I see a lot of people doing it online. I think, you know, people feel very comfortable there. They can kind of read about things, and I think what happens is, you know, you get on something like Esurance or another one of those websites that will give you a bunch of quotes from, say, you know, 15 insurance companies who are going to provide you with the information. And then people go onto those websites and it'll say, well, do you want state minimum coverage? And I think what's happening is that students are just like, well, yeah, I want to pay the least amount of money possible for car insurance. Who doesn't, right? But they don't really understand what that means. You know, that you're only purchasing liability coverage, that, you know, that you might be putting yourself in an otherwise precarious position if you're not getting sufficient coverage for your vehicle. So my strong suggestion is that when you are purchasing insurance, that you pick up the phone and you call an agent. Just remember, you are going to be this person's customer. So they should be respectful and polite to you. If they're not, find someone else, okay? If they aren't answering your questions or they're acting impatient with you, find someone else, okay? They should be bending over backwards to try and get your business. That's the way that they should be handling their business. But it's also helpful once you do have an insurance agent. You know, I've been dealing with my insurance agent since I was 16 years old. She's the first person I call if something happens, you know? You can build a relationship with that person so that if you do get into an accident or anything like that, they're gonna truly be on your side in dealing with the insurance company. Okay, It depends. I know this is like not a great answer. It depends.
It depends on the policy. So in everyone's situation, the various insurance companies are going to underwrite your policy, your risk for your car,
what they're concerned about in your situation. So somebody who has a history of letting their friends drive their, really expensive cars and getting into serious accidents is going to have a really hard time getting a policy that's going to cover other people under their vehicles. If you don't have a history of doing things like that, typically, this is a huge generalization, typically the policy will cover the vehicle. Usually it's going to cover whoever is driving the vehicle.
Just to make sure, you just said when we got an accident, and unfortunately we just contact the agency instead of the insurance company directly.
Uh-huh.
Should we contact an agency?
Agent or the insurance.
So you definitely would contact your agent.
First?
Yeah, because they can file the claim for you.
They can help you do a lot of the administration.
Yeah. So that's just the administrative crap that people don't really know how to handle when they've never been involved in an accident or anything like that. So again, your agent is making a commission off of the sale of your insurance policy, so make them work for it.
And also another example, which happened to me. So if you're in an accident, you get rear-ended by somebody who does have insurance, and you haven't heard from them, and you want to know what's going on. I want to get my car fixed. You can call your agent and say, look, I don't want to make a claim on my own insurance because once you make claims on your insurance, it can affect your rates. But can you try to get this moving? And they can do all that legwork. They can contact the other person, and they can involve that. You guys don't have time for that, so they can help you with that. Which is why you should shop around for a good person. That's what we do. I talked to State Farm, their rate was too high, so I moved on to somebody else. There's no reason you should accept the first person that you speak with.
So yes, narrative, our car got hit by some other person. It's not our mistake. For example, we park our car in the parking lot. We just move and we saw that someone else hit our car. Should we contact our agency?
Yeah, did you know did this happen, or is this like,
We didn't have,
okay.
just in case we didn't do anything.
Right.
We're going to talk about contact.
Yeah, we are going to talk about contacting the police, and it's probably a good idea in that situation to contact both the police and your insurance agent if there was a hit and run accident, because that's also a traffic offense.
Your agent's not necessarily going to make a claim on your own insurance.
Right, yeah.
I mean, my car got hit in front of the Chinese grocery and somebody ran.
Yeah, and those are tough situations.
He said he had nothing to do because there's no camera.
Right. So if you had uninsured motorist coverage in that situation and the damage was beyond the $500 deductible or the $250 deductible that you otherwise have, and there's always, these questions as to whether or not you should file a claim. If you ever have questions about that, you should come and see our office. But, say there was $5,000 worth of damage to your vehicle, I would be like, yeah, make the claim, pay the $250 and, get your $5,000 so your car would be covered. That would be uninsured. A hit and run would be covered under that.
And another example is, even like Molly said before, if you ran into a pole or something in a parking garage and your car was really damaged, there's no other person, it wasn't necessarily an accident with another car, but that's why you have insurance. So there are times when you don't want to go through your insurance, but you have it for a reason. Okay, Student Legal Services is like your insurance while you're at Ohio State to make sure that you get through and we can help you with your legal issues. But that's why you have car insurance. There's nothing wrong with using the insurance that you pay for in the situations where it's just very expensive to fix your car. It's there for a reason, to help you and to assist if you were to hit somebody else.
Yeah.
If we hit a pole or hit a trash can to get a dent in front of our car, we call insurance for the
Estimate?
For estimate of some
Yeah.
back. Are they gonna increase our rate?
Yeah, potentially if you make a claim. So again, if it's very minor damage, that's probably not something you're going to want to let them know about if you were responsible for the accident. So if you were like having trouble getting into your garage or something and you like ding up something on your car, that probably could impact your insurance policy if you make a claim, and the damages probably aren't going to be that much, and depending upon your deductible, it may not make sense to make a claim. So those like minor issues may not be something that you want to alert your insurance company to. But if there's a decent amount of damage to your car, then yeah, I think I always encourage students, like, you know, if it's going to be significant damage, there aren't too many people that walk around here that just have so much money that they're able to just pay a bunch of this stuff out of pocket. And so, you know, that's why you have this insurance, like Ali said.
In the hit and run case, are they going to increase our rate?
If you make an uninsured motorist claim, they will. Yeah, so if you actually make a claim, then yes, it will impact your rates.
But it's not our fault. We didn't do
Yeah,
it. They just
right.
did it wrong.
But they
It,
have to
it doesn't matter. They still increase your
They will
rates.
increase our rate.
Which again is like you have to make, it's a cost benefit analysis. You know, if you only have $600 worth of damages to your car, you might say, well, if they're only going to cover $400 of that after the deductible, it's probably not worth it to make the claim, you know? Because if it's going to impact my rates, if I'm going to have to pay $100 each premium year or whatever, then it might not make sense.
And it's the increase will keep with us even though we change it uninsured.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. So you can always threaten to leave. And you know, you can do that in situations where you otherwise have a really good driver's record and you can start to shop around. You can always shop around.
They want
Always.
our record as
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't follow you like.
Right. Yep.
So I recently, I don't know when it happens, but it's either in my own apartment or in the grocery store, like someone get so there's some packages. Would you consider this under collision or under my insurance?
Well, it depends. Your insurance company might classify it as either. If I were to guess, I would say that would be, but either way, it's probably going to impact your rates. I should tell you that first of all. Yeah. So your rates wouldn't just be impacted by uninsured motorists. They would also be impacted potentially by a collision coverage claim as well. Yeah.
I went to some of the body shop and most of them told me it's around $1,000 package, but one said it's $300. So that situation would.
Come to us.
Yeah, come and see us. I mean, we have some referrals for good repair shops around the area too, because we've had some students have some really bad situations where people are trying to take advantage of them. So, you know, I would say come and see us about that, because we could help you try and get a referral for a legit place. What's that?
You would make an appointment with us and bring all the estimates so that we can look at them and advise you on whether or not we think that $300 one is a low estimate based on the other ones. We don't need to see the car.
Yeah, and your insurance company should be able to help you with that as well if you have.
Because it's my first time, it's the first 6 months, and if I use it, I'm really worried that it will go out.
Sure. Yeah. So you haven't contacted them yet. Yeah. I mean, that's another thing though that they can do just for future reference. Your insurance companies really help you in dealing with repair shops and dealing with estimates and things like that. So you know, it's another reason to get them involved.
I have another question. Whenever we contact the insurance company for money back, do we have to have a report from the police?
You mean in order to provide coverage, does there have to be an accident report? Not necessarily. So if there is just damage to your vehicle, like at your house or whatever, then they don't necessarily have to have one. It's never a bad idea to file a police report.
Because that does go back to my previous question. If the police file a report, even though, and then the insurance company give back us some money, and they also increase our rate, and we feel unsatisfied, and we go to another insurance company, they will check our record, and they see the police report that we got hit somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just clarification about police reports. I mean, anyone can make a police report. You fill out the report yourselves sometimes. So oftentimes, like, just because it's actually in a police report doesn't mean that anyone takes what is contained in the police report seriously. Okay, so unless an officer actually responds to the situation and, you know, takes his own assessment, does an investigation, and actually apportions liability, you know, just like a crash report or a police report that's filed after the fact, I mean, that really could contain whatever information you want. And so I wouldn't think that they would probably give it much credit.
And usually the insurance company, new insurance company, gonna ask us, do you have
and you cannot lie to
Yeah.
an insurance company
So if we
in those situations.
You're right. I
say
mean,
the truth, they will still include the.
well, but that company may give you a more competitive rate. So even though they're taking into account the same exact thing, they may just be willing to offer you cheaper coverage.
Right.
There's no like standard amount. It's all each company. And also, even if you're in an accident and you have insurance and the other person has insurance, sometimes there's nothing wrong with not going through the insurance. If the two
Yeah.
parties want to just come to an agreement, but that's definitely when you should see us because we want to make sure that it's in writing.
Yeah.
Since it's just between you and that person. So, you know, I just met with somebody and they didn't want to go through their insurance and I was fine with that, but it had to be in writing because we have to protect you guys, right?
Sorry, I can't help it because I have a pre-situation. I just wanted to let people know that even if a person seems trustworthy at the scene, call the police because the stories change.
Yeah.
I got caught with that and, you know, it fell on me because he happened to not have insurance and seemed really nice and so call the police. And secondly, the insurance company wants to get your car fixed, usually at the cheapest rate.
Right.
So if you have a preferred shop, they will give you a quote and, you know, your insurance company will have to beat that. You want to make sure that you're not getting like,
Sure.
substandard parts.
Right.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great info, and we'll talk a little bit more
Yeah, we're gonna
about
talk
like
more about
talking to the police
kind of
after
stuff.
an accident.
All right, so let's just move on about the actual charges that we've seen international students facing as a result of some license issues. So we've dealt with driving outside the temporary permit restrictions, which we talked about. So that is driving without the licensed driver with the Ohio license 21 and over in the front passenger seat. That is very common, so please do not do it. If you have to get somewhere and no one is available, take a cab, take the bus, walk, do whatever you can to avoid that. No operator's license, it's another way to charge something similar. So if you had an international driver's license and you never got your temporary permit, they would charge you with not having an operator's license. We know that you do, but again, as we discussed at the beginning, the Columbus Police and the Columbus City Prosecutor's Office do not recognize international licenses. And then these are your standard minor traffic offenses that we see quite a bit. Speeding. I've been seeing a lot of high rate speeding lately. So I just want you guys to be careful because it's not only dangerous, but the faster you go, the more points you get on your license. So I'm not sure if you guys know about points on licenses, but in Ohio, you get points against you for traffic infractions. So a speeding ticket is 2 points. Once you get to 12 points, your license gets taken away from you. And it's not that hard to get there if you're speeding a lot. Okay, so there are some offenses. If you're going fast enough, it's 4 points for a speeding ticket. Once you get to 6, you do get a warning letter from the BMV. So keep it in mind, and points affect your insurance. So, you know, if it's a moving violation, typically it's going to be 2 points. But as the offense gets more serious, there's more points associated with it. Failure to yield and traffic control device are very common for accidents. So if you're turning left and you think you have a clear path to go, but then there was somebody coming straight from the other direction, you're going to get cited every time for that. I know that the other person was probably speeding, but there's no way for us to prove it because the officer didn't see the accident and you were the one turning left. So please be careful. A lot of the intersections around campus are dangerous. We were just saying on the way over here. And the traffic control device, just a word of caution, no turn on red, do not turn red. If it doesn't say no turn on red, come to a complete stop behind the line and then you can turn right on red when you have a clear path. You do not have the right of way. So with the red light cameras, they're going out, they're not going to be around anymore, but they can take a picture of you at a red light when you're turning right on red. And I see so many people just flying right through that red light. It is a right on red, you can take it, but you have to stop first and make sure that you have the right of way. So these are some of the typical offenses we see, and they happen, as it says, on campus, which would be Ohio State Police, and off campus, which would be Columbus Police or a different municipality. Again, if you get a ticket like this, it happens. I've gotten speeding tickets before. Don't panic, just call us and we'll deal with it, okay? We just want you to be aware of some of the things that we're seeing. And that's when the officer's gonna say, I want to see your insurance. And then you're going to get to show it to him, and he's going to check yes on the ticket, and it's going to be great, and we're not going to have to worry about it.
Yeah,
Okay?
so that's a good point. Make sure you have your proof of insurance and your vehicle at all times.
Yep. Okay, so we've been talking about this quite a bit, but we want to talk about the police. We do recommend calling the police when you're in an accident. You know, sometimes the other person's really nice and it's just a minor fender bender. I've been in one and I didn't call the police. Probably wasn't a good idea. You should just have it documented by somebody that's not you or the other person, because as we heard, stories change. People will say, I don't know, he drove off. And then you're saying, well, I didn't drive off. I was there, you drove off. So why am I being investigated for a hit and run? Or, well, that's not how it happened. And if the officer came to the scene, even if he didn't see the accident, he may be able to talk to witnesses or see the intersection and understand that there's no way the accident could have happened the way the other person is saying. So it's really important to call the officer to the scene and let them talk to each party, and exchanging information is critical. So we need to know who that person is. And the police have these great pre-printed forms that give you exactly what information to fill out. And that's going to help you with your insurance company, and it's going to help us when we're representing you.
So what to say if the police come. So, you need to answer the police officer's questions about, what happened with the accident. So especially, if you're not the person who's responsible for the accident, you need to be as clear as possible. I understand that this is an overwhelming situation. It's been more than once that I've had students in situations where they say, like, they left the scene and they were like, I just wish I would have been more clear with the police officer. I was just so overwhelmed with what was happening. Try and keep a clear head during that time, because that is the time that the police officer is going to decide whether or not you're responsible for the accident. This is a really difficult thing for somebody to do unless it's like a clear, violation. There's a clear point of impact on the vehicle to indicate who's responsible for the accident. And that doesn't happen very often. Typically the officer can't just tell just by the way the accident occurred what happened. And the only way for him to get at that information is to talk to the witnesses and to you and the people who were involved in the accident. So if that other person is up there and they're lying and they're saying, oh yeah, this guy totally turned right on red and I had the right of way and he was responsible, and they don't get your version of the events, they're gonna cite you. So, it's not a good idea to be quiet about what happened in the situation, and especially if you were not the person that was responsible for the accident.
And something interesting on that too is there are times, especially in the winter here, when you will call to have a police officer dispatch to your location of the accident. And there are times when Columbus Police, they're not sending officers to non-injury accidents because they've got injuries, they've got traffic problems. You may have an officer that doesn't want to write a report for some reason, okay? It happens. It happened to us when we were in the car together. They wouldn't write a report. So you know what we did? We went to their website and we printed off the form and we wrote it ourselves, because you have to protect yourself, okay? And if an officer's not going to come to your location, I know that this other person you may have gotten in an accident with is nice. They may even be a student, okay? And it's okay. Just fill out the report. Nothing is going to happen. It's just a documentation of what happened when it's fresh in your mind, because the further you get from the incident, the more foggy it's going to get, and you're going to start to second guess yourself. If you have a friend in the car, this seems trivial to tell you, tell that friend, take out your phone and start writing down what we need to do or what happened, because I'm the one that was in the accident and my heart rate is going and I'm nervous and I don't want to forget anything. Okay?
Before we go on, we didn't really talk about what to do,
injury.
first of all, if you are involved in an accident. And again, a lot of this is intuitive, but you really want to make sure that you're not afraid to, get your car, first of all, to a safe place. So if you're in a place already where the cars isn't going to actually drop, it's not going to block lanes of traffic, then it's best to keep the cars where they are. But otherwise, you have an obligation to make sure that they're in a safe location if the cars are drivable. And so you want to make sure that you can kind of get over to a safe location. It's okay to get out of the vehicle, assuming that nobody is injured and the car is drivable. It's okay to get out of the vehicle and make sure that the other person is okay. And then, then you can start talking about nuts and bolts and calling the police and alerting your insurance company.
We should drive to a safe place, but I think we should keep the
Yeah, I mean, that is what a lot of people intuitively want to do. If it's a clear, like, rear end situation, and this is not, I mean, your car isn't going to need to be in the same location in order for the cop to assess damage in that situation. I mean, if you're in the middle of an intersection and the cars are totaled, let's say there was a head-on collision, I mean, there is no sense in trying to separate those vehicles if they can't move. I mean, they're gonna come out to the scene and respond. And I mean, if it's a severe accident, it's very unlikely that you're going to be able to actually move your cars to a safe place. So in those situations, you're really going to be more concerned about injuries. And so that's the last bullet point that we've brought up. You know, certainly, if anyone is injured, then immediately you want to assess whether or not it's something that you need to call an ambulance over. If so, then you do. If it's not, if it's just minor issues or things like that, you need to let the officer know if you intend to, like, follow up at an urgent care or something like that. Even if you don't think you need to go to an emergency room, you know, if it's just minor, like a little bit of soreness or something like that. If you're intending to go to a doctor, you need to let that the police officer know that you do intend to see a doctor about your injuries. Okay, so when do you report to your insurance company? I report at the scene. I've actually been involved in several car accidents, and like I said, I mean, that's usually one of the first people that I contact, especially if I think that it's something where I need my insurance company to be involved, or if I think that they're going to be able to come out and take a report. Sometimes in those situations like Allie was talking about where the police won't respond, if you are represented by one of the larger insurers in town and you've got an agent locally, they may send out an adjuster to take a report themselves, okay? So that's huge if your insurance company is willing to do that, because they're gonna take really professional photographs. You know, they're gonna really assess points of impact on the vehicle, assess the other person's vehicle. They're gonna do the investigation that you don't know how to do as, you know, just a normal driver. So, you know, if you don't have the police responding, then I would say contact your insurance company. Depending upon the severity of the accident and what happened, it's possible that they may even dispatch an adjuster to see you immediately. And there was something else I wanted to say with that.
I mean, the insurance company will send people to the site.
What's that?
The insurance company will send people to the site to look at the accident.
Yes.
Yeah, they'll document the scene.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can take pictures on your phone. I mean, that is perfectly acceptable.
Yeah. 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 So take lots of pictures, not just one. Okay. So, I mean, you've got capability to take 5 million pictures on your smartphone. So take a ton of pictures.
Take a picture of the other person's
vehicle, the other person's driver's license, the other person's license plate, you know, any identifying information that you get of the other person, as well as pictures of their vehicle. Okay, so that you can see what damages are present at the time that happened. So,
They ask you to take a picture of us. How will allow them to take?
I mean, there's nothing you can do to stop them from doing it, right? I mean, there's nothing, you can't, like, put like a force field around your car.
They want to show me your driver's license and take a picture.
Yeah.
Do we allow them to do
I mean, as part of an obligation, I think as a result of an accident, you have an obligation as an Ohio driver actually to exchange the information. And so I don't know how you get around that. I mean, you can't lie about who you are. You know, as an Ohio driver, you've kind of taken that on as your responsibility to share that information.
So I'm not usually drive a car here, but if I plan like drive a car for a friend, I can have insurance like just for 1 day, just for the time that I know that I will drive. Like I work with animals, and when I go to the farm and I know that my internship will be like 2 months, my insurance is for just that 2 months. So I can have something like that.
Yeah, you would just need to work that out with the insurance company. Now, what they might make you do, because most policy periods are 6 months, is just get the policy, but you can cancel policies and they'll refund the remainder of your premium. Yeah, but you want to make that clear to them on the front end to make sure that they will actually do that. But yeah, I mean, typically, most policy periods for car insurance that I've encountered are 6 months. You might have a 1 month payment schedule, you know, like you might pay every month because that might be just something that you work out with your insurance company. But usually the policy period is for a period of 6 months. And, you know, after that 6 month period, they can reassess your premium or, you know, whatever the case may be. Mm-hmm.
We also just want to make sure you guys are aware that if you have a court appearance or are being asked to make a statement by an insurance company, before you make any payments or agree to anything or say anything, please come and see us first. We just want to talk to you and find out what happened and counsel you on how to do those things appropriately. There are people out there that take advantage of other people. Okay, so they see an accident and they say, oh, well, I mean, I've really been wanting to get my car fixed and I have all these other damages. We don't.
Oh, and my neck hurts.
Yeah, we don't, even though they walked out of the car and looked perfectly fine, we have a case like this right now. We don't want you to get taken advantage of. So come and see us, that's why we're here. We will handle all of those discussions. We don't want you talking to these other people on your own. We want you to be in school, focusing on school, and letting us take care of that. Because as soon as we get involved, the other person's gonna stop inflating their damages and understand that you have an attorney on your side and we're not just gonna issue them a check for whatever amount they say that they're owed. We want documentation and proof of those damages, okay?
Okay, so, I will do this quickly because we're kind of nearing the end of the time. I want to give us some time to answer any questions that you might have. But we did provide you with a little take home. This talks about car buying and selling. And, I think, the difference, new versus used cars, I mean, usually there's a huge difference in who you're dealing with a new versus a used car seller. So if you're buying a new car, you're going to have to purchase that car through a dealership. And also with a new car, you're going to probably have some additional protections provided to you, both under the new car purchase itself. It'll probably have some warranties, which we'll talk about here in a minute. And in addition, there's an Ohio statute called the Ohio Lemon Law, which will protect you if you buy a new car and that new car has a ton of problems with it. It will, entitle you to potentially a replacement of the vehicle or repairs of the vehicle. So, in terms of whether or not you want to buy a new car or a used car, I mean, people are all over the mark as to whether or not it's a good idea to buy a new car versus a used car. But with used cars, what we're always concerned about is, sometimes you could be buying from a dealership, you could be buying from a private party, you could be buying from a private party in another state. And so most of the issues that I deal with relate to used car purchases, usually because of the people that we're dealing with. So you need to be really savvy about the people that you are dealing with, okay? So if you purchase a car out of state and there are problems associated with that transaction, we're going to be very limited in our ability to help you with that issue, okay? And it could be very expensive and difficult for you to actually deal with that. So just because you're going to save like $1,000 in buying your car in like Poughkeepsie, New York, like you might not necessarily want to do that, because if you're going to find something that is going to be something that is, otherwise reliable or something around here, there might be more that you can do in the event you ever encounter any problems, okay? In dealing with what to ask the car dealer or the seller, you really need to get especially with a used car purchase, you're going to need to get an extensive maintenance history. You want to know what shape the car is in, any repair records that are associated with it, whether or not there has been any major accidents with the vehicle. You can get what's called a Carfax report. Has anyone ever heard of that? Okay. Okay, it's in the buying guide. So it's gonna, that talks about actually requesting a Carfax report. That should report any vehicles in which the car was actually taken to a shop to actually get repairs on the vehicle, or if it was ever reported in an accident, then that should be located on the Carfax. They're not 100%, but they're pretty accurate. So that's good. And then I'm trying to think other things that we should be talking about with the car dealer or the seller. Sales price, you want to look for comparable sales. So Kelley Blue Book is a great place to start. That's a free website available online. You're going to be able to run the specs on the car to see whether or not, this is a good price for the vehicle or something that you should be considering in comparison with other vehicles in the area. So that's a great place to kind of put in the specifics for this vehicle and see whether or not this is a fair price that they're quoting to you. But then from there, if you, pull vehicle report, that's what we talked about. Warranties, this is a really big one. If you are buying the car from the dealership, you should ask to see whether or not there would be any warranties that would cover the car. Typically now with new cars, there are lots of warranties that are going to cover your vehicle. So this is going to be more of a concern in purchasing a used car. If contract that you sign with a used car dealer or an individual says that the car is being sold as is, that means the car is being sold as is. You know, so if you drive off the lot and the car breaks down, it's your problem now. So it's really important that you see whether or not there are going to be any warranties to cover you, you know, so maybe for the first 30 days or some sort of a limited warranty, so that if there is a problem, then you can go back to the dealership and get some money to compensate you for any problems. For title and registration, just understand that, you know, I think it's within 30 days of the purchase of a vehicle, because you have to have a temporary tag on the car right away, but then after that, is it 30 or 60? It's either 30 or 60 days. You have to get the car titled and registered here in the state of Ohio in your name. Okay, so one of the things that I see a lot with international students is a lot of buying and selling of vehicles between friends. So, you know, let's say somebody buys a car and then that person decides to go home and then a car is sold to a friend. I mean, if that happens, you have to go through the title process in order for that transaction actually to have occurred, okay?
You cannot take a plate from one car and put it on another car. That
Yeah.
plate is tied to that car. It's registered to it. So we do see that a lot too, is use of tag of another vehicle is another offense you can be charged with.
Yeah. And finally, taxes and the value of a car. This is honestly an issue that we see almost exclusively with international students. And it is a situation where people have, I think that there's maybe a misconception that you can put on the title of the vehicle, if you're transferring the title, that you didn't pay anything for a vehicle so that you don't have to pay sales tax. Let me tell you what happens if you do that. If you do that, it will automatically be flagged by the state of Ohio as something that is potentially fraudulent. And then you're going to get something from the Department of Taxation that says you have to sign this affidavit that says you either, you know, that you didn't pay anything for the vehicle. So if you lie there, then you're also falsifying a document to the state of Ohio. So then you're really in hot water if they decide to come after you. Or you have to pay the sales tax, which they estimate it based on what, you know, the Kelley Blue Book value or whatever of the car would have otherwise been. Sales tax is just a part of life. You know, I mean, we would all love to not have to pay sales tax. You know, this year on my taxes, I had to pay all these sales taxes associated with Amazon. I was so angry about it. But you know what? I did it because it's not worth it. You know what? Just pay the sales tax. Don't misstate the price on the back of your title when you do purchase the vehicle. So if you buy a car from your friend, put the correct amount in there, figure out your sales tax and send it to the state of Ohio and you're done. It's not going to be a problem. Okay? And if you guys want to back into your number, you can do that. So if you say, I want to pay $12,000 altogether, you can figure out how to purchase, you know, select the amount that is going to go to your friend and the amount that's going to go to the state of Ohio. That's perfectly fine. Okay?
Okay, we made it.
We're right under the gun, but we made it.
Like we said at the beginning, we are here to help, even if it's just advice, questions. Come by any time, make an appointment. We have a lot of availability. Molly and I will stick around for a few more minutes, but that's our phone number. We're in the Gateway on 11th across from the Barnes & Noble. So we're pretty accessible. We have tons of availability, so let us know if you guys need anything.